You won't believe that your behaviors have an explanation. Watch the entire video and know that the person's body language has a lot to tell us. These are facts that you need to hear. The knowledge I will give you today will be crucial to your life from now on. You won't see people and these behaviors the same. Now you will know how to analyze the situation better and know when to act in the most stoic way possible. However, I don't want us to underestimate the mind. Even listen to this. Isaac Asimov was a literary visionary whose work imagined worlds in which humanity had enough technology to power machines. The possibility of these metal structures experiencing genuine emotions such as joy, sadness, anguish, and excitement was as fascinating as it was controversial. However, despite significant advances in artificial intelligence to date, no machine has managed to surpass the threshold. There is still no algorithm capable of replicating empathy and love, essential attributes of the human being. Well, here are 11 facts you should know. But before continuing, subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell to be informed when I upload more videos like this. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Number 1. The indelible traces of early adulthood. It's undeniable how often older people reminisce about their 20s. Anecdotes, emotions, and decisions from that time seem to resonate with special intensity in his memories. This phenomenon, known as increased memory, is explained by the confluence of various psychological factors. The early adult stage is characterized by a maelstrom of emotions. Graduation, first jobs, loving decisions, construction of one's own identity, everything converges in a whirlwind of experiences that deeply impact our being. Erik Erikson, in his theory of psychosocial development, describes this stage as the search for identity versus the confusion of roles. The events of early adulthood are not only intense, but they are also novel. These are the first times we have experienced many of these situations, which makes them even more memorable. Daniel Kahneman, in his book Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, explains that our System 1, the one that operates quickly and intuitively, is activated with greater intensity in the face of the new and unexpected, engraving those events in our memory. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on the dichotomy of control and the acceptance of what we cannot control, offers us an interesting perspective on this phenomenon. While early adult experiences are important, we should not allow them to define our present or future. Epictetus reminds us that the past has no power over the present. We must focus on the present, living with virtue and wisdom, not clinging to the shadows of the past. Still, the experiences of early adulthood leave a deep imprint on our psyche, forging our identity and shaping our future. However, Stoic wisdom reminds us not to be slaves to the past, but to focus on the present with virtue and wisdom. Number 2. Thinking about your problems from a third-person perspective allows you to find effective solutions. When you can't find a solution to your problems, try to give it a third-person approach. And it is that we face a personal problem, and the fog clouds our judgment. However, when observing a friend's difficulties, clarity emerges like a radiant sun. This paradox, known as Solomon's paradox, has intrigued psychologists and philosophers alike. This phenomenon, known as Solomon's paradox, is named after King Solomon of the Hebrew Bible, the third monarch of ancient Israel, who asked God for the gift of wisdom. People from distant places came seeking Solomon's discernment. However, in his private sphere, Solomon showed a lack of judgment, which eventually led to the collapse of his empire. Why are we more lucid in the face of other people's problems? Jonathan Haidt, in his book The Moralistic Mind, explains that our brain is programmed to protect ourselves. When it comes to our own difficulties, emotions such as fear, anxiety, or desire cloud our reasoning. On the other hand, by observing the situation of a third party, we can think with greater objectivity and rationality. Now, how do we apply Solomon's paradox to our advantage? First, identify emotions and make a bias that clouds your judgments. Second, analyze the situation more objectively. Third, consider different perspectives and solutions. It sounds easy, but remember to apply it as if it were advice for a friend. Number 3, the most incompetent are the least aware of their own incompetence. At family gatherings, on social media, or even at work, we've likely witnessed the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. But what is this effect about? Well, an individual with remarkable confidence exposes erroneous ideas, ignoring the knowledge of others. He ignores his own incompetence, believing himself to be an expert in the field. This paradox, described by psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, invites us to explore the roots of this cognitive bias. Daniel Kahneman, in his book Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, describes two systems of thinking. System 1, fast and intuitive, and System 2, slow and rational. The Dunning-Kruger effect relates to System 1, which drives us to overestimate our abilities, ignoring our limitations, to be blind to our own incompetence. Lack of knowledge and low cognitive ability generate a double difficulty. Which one? The inability to close one's own incompetence, and the inability to recognize the competence of others. This double blindness creates a vicious circle. The incompetent, by not recognizing his mistake, does not seek to improve. It stagnates in its false security, while the really competent, being ignored, cannot contribute their knowledge. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on the search for truth and self-knowledge, offers us a tool to combat the Dunning-Kruger effect. Epictetus reminds us that ignorance is the greatest evil. We must cultivate intellectual humility, recognizing our limitations and constantly seeking to learn and improve. David Dunning says, "Incompetence produces errors in judgment, errors that in turn blind you to your own incompetence," while Epictetus states that ignorance is the greatest evil. To combat this effect, we must cultivate intellectual humility, recognize our limitations, and constantly seek to learn and improve. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on the search for truth and self-knowledge, offers us a valuable tool for this purpose. Number 4. Hostile people tend to have more aggressive dogs. Show me your dog's character and I'll get to know yours. It is an observed fact. Dogs with aggressive behavior often have owners with hostile personalities. Scientific research confirms this. Anger, aggression, and hostility are more prevalent in owners of stereotypically violent breeds. Just as we select friends and partners with similar interests and tendencies, do we look to our dogs for a reflection of our own personality? Psychology offers some answers. Albert Bandura, a pioneer of social learning theory, reminds us that imitation plays a crucial role in the acquisition of behaviors. Hostile owners, by interacting with their dogs aggressively, may be unintentionally transmitting that behavior. Chronic stress, a product of social isolation or insecurity of the environment, can increase aggressiveness in both people and animals. A dog raised in a hostile environment is more likely to develop aggressive behavior as a response to fear or anxiety. So it's important to remember that breed doesn't determine a dog's behavior. Education and training are essential to mold the personality of any animal. A responsible owner, regardless of their own personality, can raise a well-balanced and non-aggressive dog. As Seneca once said, anger is an enemy that attacks its own master. Number 5. In the dreamer's mind. Daydreaming, that daydream that takes us away from the task at hand, is usually seen as a defect, a sign of inattention. However, science reveals a more complex facet. Dreamers can be more intelligent and creative. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, in his book Flow, describes attention as a state of total concentration on the task at hand. However, the mind is not a static entity. The default neural network, active in daydreaming, allows for the exploration of ideas, creative problem-solving, and the generation of new neural connections. Studies have shown that people with greater intellectual and creative capacity are more likely to daydream. Jonathan Schooler, in his book The Eyes of the Mind, explains that daydreaming allows incubate ideas. The subconscious mind works on problems in a non-conscious way, generating innovative solutions. Connect ideas. Daydreaming facilitates the creation of new neural connections, which boosts creativity. Reflect on the experience. Daydreaming helps us process emotions, memories, and experiences, allowing us to learn and grow. Marcus Raichle, in his study The Default Neural Network, explains that people with higher brain efficiency are more likely to daydream. Your brain, by performing tasks with ease, frees up resources for daydreaming, allowing the exploration of ideas and creativity. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on virtue and right action, invites us to find a balance between mindfulness and daydreaming. Seneca reminds us that time is the most precious thing we have. We must be aware of the use of our time, dedicating it to activities that bring us closer to virtue and a good life. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi says, "Attention is the ability to focus on the present moment, excluding distractions." Daydreaming is not only a distraction, but also a door to creativity. People with higher intelligence and creativity are more likely to daydream, and their brains appear to be more efficient. However, it is important to find a balance between attention and daydreaming, using our time consciously and virtuously. Number 6. Rejection does hurt. An unrequited love, a friendship that is broken, a job that is not achieved. Rejection in any form can leave a deep wound, not only emotionally but also physically. Why does rejection hurt so much? Science offers us an answer. The brain processes rejection in a similar way to physical pain. Before continuing, I have a video that explains how to deal with rejection that will help you a lot in case this is your current context. I'll leave it in the description. Look at it. He recommended it to you. MRI studies have shown that the same areas of the brain are activated in both physical pain and social rejection. Naomi Eisenberger, in her study Neuroscience of Social Pain, explains that rejection activates the anterior cingulate cortex, the area responsible for physical pain, and the nucleus accumbens, involved in reward and motivation. The pain of rejection, from an evolutionary perspective, can be seen as a survival mechanism. Erich Fromm, in his book The Art of Loving, explains that the human being is a social being who needs the affection and acceptance of others for his well-being. The pain of rejection drives us to seek connection and avoid situations that may put our sense of belonging at risk. Nathaniel Branden, in his book The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, explains that rejection can be interpreted as a sign that we are not good enough, which can generate feelings of inferiority and insecurity. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on accepting what we cannot control, offers us a useful perspective for dealing with rejection. Epictetus reminds us that what disturbs us is not things, but our opinions about things. We must accept rejection as an inevitable part of life and focus on what we can control, our reactions and our attitude. In conclusion, rejection hurts both physically and emotionally. However, it is important to understand that pain is temporary and that we can learn to overcome it. Acceptance, self-esteem, and a stoic perspective are valuable tools for coping with rejection and moving on with our lives. Number 7. Speaking in a foreign language, a door to rationality. Have you noticed that when speaking a foreign language, decisions become colder and more rational? Science supports this experience. The use of a foreign language can reduce biases in decision-making. Vygotsky, in his theory of sociocultural development, explains that language is not only a tool of communication, but also an instrument of thought. When speaking a foreign language, our brain faces a challenge, suppressing the mother tongue and activating the linguistic structures of the new language. Brain imaging studies have shown that the same areas of the brain are involved in both foreign language use and rational thinking. In addition, it has been observed that by activating the brain's inhibition center, intuitions and emotions are also inhibited, enhancing rational decision-making. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on virtue and reason, finds in this phenomenon an ally. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminds us that the mind that governs itself is the most powerful. Speaking a foreign language by inhibiting biases and emotions brings us closer to that ideal of a rational and virtuous mind. Speaking a foreign language not only allows us to communicate in another language, but it can also be a tool to improve decision-making. By inhibiting biases and emotions, the use of a foreign language brings us closer to more rational and objective thinking. Stoic science and philosophy endorse this phenomenon, providing us with a valuable perspective to understand the power of the bilingual mind. Number 8. We blame people's behavior for their personality. In the heat of traffic, an interruption can unleash our fury. However, minutes later we repeat the same action, justifying it by the haste or the exceptional nature of the moment. Why this incongruity? Psychology offers us an answer: the fundamental attribution error. Harold Kelly, in his theory of causal attribution, explains that we tend to attribute the behavior of others to internal factors, such as personality and character, while our own behavior is justified by external factors such as context and situation. This tendency to internal attribution has two aspects. The first is excessive dispositionality. We exaggerate the role of personality in the behavior of others, ignoring situational influences. And the second is situational underestimation. We minimize the impact of context on our own actions, attributing them to our own nature. In the example of traffic, the anger at the interruption is explained by the attribution of bad intent to the other driver. We see him as an imbecile, without considering the circumstances that led him to act like this. On the other hand, we justify our own interruption by haste, ignoring that the context also influences us. How do we overcome it? The first thing is to consider the context, analyze the circumstances surrounding the behavior of others and ourselves. The second thing is to be empathetic. Put yourself in the other person's shoes to understand their motivations. And finally, avoid labels. Don't rush to judge people for their behavior. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on personal responsibility, invites us to reflect on this bias. Epictetus reminds us that we cannot control the actions of others, only our own. We must focus on our own reactions and avoid judging the intentions of others. Fundamental attribution error is a bias that leads us to judge people by their behavior without considering context. To overcome it, we must be aware of this bias, consider the circumstances, be empathetic, and avoid labels. Stoic philosophy offers us a useful perspective to focus on personal responsibility and avoid judging the intentions of others. Number 9. The third-person effect, blindness to persuasion. Have you noticed how advertising seems to affect others more than you? This perception, known as the third-person effect, leads us to believe that we are more immune to persuasion than others. The third-person effect relates to quick, intuitive thinking, which drives us to overestimate the influence of persuasion on others, and to underestimate its influence on ourselves. This phenomenon is also explained by egocentric bias, the tendency to see ourselves as more rational and objective than others. We believe that our analytical skills protect us from persuasion, ignoring that we are as vulnerable as anyone else. Robert Cialdini, in his book Influence, describes the weapons of persuasion that advertisers use to influence our behavior. These techniques, such as reciprocity, scarcity, or social proof, are effective because they operate at a subconscious level, without us being aware of their influence. We must be critical of the messages we receive and evaluate their impact on ourselves, without falling into the illusion of immunity. The influence of advertising and persuasive messages operates on a subconscious level, so it is important to be critical and aware of our own vulnerabilities. Stoic philosophy offers us a useful perspective to be vigilant and evaluate the impact of the messages we receive. Number 10. Dopamine and information addiction, a cycle of seek and reward. Have you been lost in a sea of information, surfing the internet for hours without even realizing it? Science offers us an explanation. Dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, plays a crucial role in the search for information. Kent Berridge, in his study, The Neuroscience of Pleasure Seeking, explains that dopamine is released in two stages. 1. The anticipation phase. Dopamine is released when we anticipate a reward, such as the information we seek. And 2. The consummation phase. Dopamine is released when we get the reward, satisfying our curiosity. In the case of information seeking, this cycle of anticipation and consummation creates an addictive effect. The anticipation of finding new and relevant information releases dopamine, which drives us to keep looking. And when you get the information, dopamine is released again, reinforcing the behavior and creating a desire to keep looking for more. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on virtue and moderation, offers us a useful perspective for dealing with information addiction. Seneca reminds us that we must be masters of our time, not slaves to it. We must be aware of the time we spend searching for information and make sure that it is time well spent, which brings us knowledge and value. Yes, dopamine plays a crucial role in finding information, creating a reward cycle that can be addictive. The infinite nature of the internet and the constant availability of data mean that the search for information is never completed. Stoic philosophy offers us a useful perspective to face this trend, inviting us to be aware of the time we spend on information and make sure that it is time well spent. Number 11. Altruism as a source of well-being. Did you know that helping others regularly can contribute to a longer, happier life? Science reveals that altruism, selfless action for the sake of others, has a positive impact on our physical and mental well-being. Martin Seligman, in his book Authentic Happiness, explains that volunteering is one of the activities that produces the most happiness. Helping others generates a series of benefits such as 1. Increases happiness and satisfaction with life. Feeling that we contribute to something meaningful fills us with satisfaction and makes us feel good about ourselves. 2. Improves mental health. Volunteering reduces stress, anxiety, and depression, while also increasing self-esteem and self-confidence. 3. Strengthens social relationships. Helping others connects us with other people, creating a sense of community and belonging. And 4. Promotes physical health. Volunteering can be a form of physical exercise, which in turn has a positive impact on cardiovascular health, blood pressure, and the immune system. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on virtue and the common good, finds in altruism an expression of the good life. Helping others is a way of living in harmony with human nature, which is sociable and cooperative. Well, those were 11 facts that you should know. Do you have any others? Share it with the whole community in the comment box. Now yes, that's all for today. We say goodbye and see you soon.